Alright, you guys, this is a friend Tinoco here on the southern edge of North Memphis, uh, telling you what you need to know, not what you want to hear. As always, keeping it real. But there's something that occurred to me. I got to follow up and put a little more fat on the bone of the discussion I had yesterday, well, the other day with you guys about two separate realities in media consumption in the United States. So I think that, but basically the punchline is that I cannot uh, underemphasize the importance of what the NFL is doing. The NFL is going way against the grain in order to expand its brand, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to go back to I was a little boy in I'll I'll admit in the 1970s, and there's a couple things going on in the 1970s. One of them was the Steelers Cowboys rivalry was the top rivalry in football, and the other one was the rise of a band called Kiss. It expanded rock and roll into the mainstream, basically. Um, so, with the Steelers and the Cowboys, the NFL had its markets, and you would see on TV basically, there weren't many channels available for those of you old enough to remember, and so everybody would be shown their local thing, right? Their local team on network television. But the thing, though, is that what about the tremendous expanses of the country, like the entire state of Tennessee back in the day, that did not have a home team? Well, the networks were going to default, and at that time it would have been CBS and NBC, occasionally ABC, I suppose. But they had boxing, Wild World of Sports, with Howard Cosell. The the problem there was that you had all these expansive teams that had no home, no teams that called them home. So basically, the NFL chose to highlight the default teams were Pittsburgh and Dallas. And they were the teams that were, I guess, had the biggest prospects for success over an extended period of time. There were those marketable. So this is why you see an over representation to this day. We're talking 40 plus years later that Pittsburgh and Dallas have the highest national fan bases within the NFL. The other thing about Kiss is, not only did they bring rock and roll, rock music past its kind of like culturally deep and intellectual, war protest, socially critical audience into the industrializing Midwest, to kids who were rebelling against the fact that the best thing going around that they had looked forward to in the future was to work in the same factory that their parents worked in. All they wanted to do was have a good time, and sex and drugs and rock and roll. And so they went in there and they completely absorbed that with their sex and drugs and rock and roll lyrics. It just so happened that in the South, a lot of them, a lot of preachers in the South were saying, well, they were having a demonic effect on the kids. They're sent by the devil. Look at them. Look at that face paint. Their crazy antics of the show. They're biting off the heads. No, that's Ozzy. Heads of chickens and spilling blood and so on and so forth. Oh well. So yeah. So Kiss, part of the Kiss mystique was The evangelical Christians in places like Memphis, thereabouts, Mississippi, were thought to have been of the devil, inspired by they had satanic music and they had satanic rituals during the concerts. So, so that was an effective deterrent for adoption into, let's say, the KISS Army back in the day. Well, putting both of those things aside for a second, fast forward not from the 70s to the late 90s, when I was a first-time dude in corporate America. Well, I was sent to the Mexican border a lot. And I also went to school in 7-8 years prior to that on the East Coast. So what did I learn from going to the East Coast in college and grad school and going to the Mexican border, let's say Laredo, San Antonio, San Diego, in that time? Well, I learned about the fact that there were a lot of radio stations, media outlets, TV and radio outlets, back when we had local TV and radio outlets, that were in Spanish. Or they had different, or they had additional formats like house music. There was other genres of music that were hitting here that were not hitting there, that were not hitting here in pre-millennial Memphis. So yeah, so we had no Spanish language radio station. We were kind of starting to get a regional Mexican radio station, but we were not getting salsa. We were not getting a lot of the national Spanish programming here. So I didn't hear Shakira in her glorious Spanish language format. We didn't know about Sofia Vergara in her 20s and 30s. We missed out. First time I heard about Selena was when she was killed. And it was a mystery. Remember, it was a mystery to all of us. Like, how do they sell out of this Newsweek? Remember Newsweek? This Newsweek edition that commemorated Selena. Why did it sell out all of a sudden? Well, we didn't understand that in the states that were flyover states, or away from the border, away from the coast, away from the border. We didn't understand that. That wasn't who we were exposed to. We were not exposed to those genres or these people or these experiences. We were not exposed to salsa music or, back then it was hitting. Don Omar was hitting, for example. We weren't exposed to those people. But definitely people were rocking to them all over the East Coast, the West Coast, and the southern border. I could hear the entirety of "Donde están los ladrones" on the radio. That album that Shakira put out back in 1997 or so. That was her biggest Spanish language hit before she crossed over. Anyway, yeah, that was. So when you hear about Ricky Martin and Shakira back here in Memphis after the year 2000, we thought these were all new artists, right? So there is a different experience. We do not understand how. We don't understand this. We're not exposed to those genres. Heck, a lot of African American folks in Memphis didn't know about rock music, like heavy metal, and then they hear it for the first time. You post reactions and say, "Oh, this is great! Oh my God, these people cut up. Look, they're good at their instruments. They're not using autotune." Blah blah blah. Okay, so So basically, we started getting good in the media, seeing these phenomena play out. They started leveraging them to design, to further design the and reinforce the divides in our culture. You know, I guess we can barely say Pitbull is a big star around in the midsection of the country, except for Chicago, right? But you know, always obviously Pitbull's been hitting ever since the mid aughts uh, on the East Coast and the border section, like he had been all over Latin America. So this brings us to the day. Why is it so strange that Bad Bunny hits to the mainstream MAGA? I wouldn't see so much mainstream, but definitely the flyover country, MAGA, white, Protestant, evangelical society? Why are people so ready to say that he's satanic? Huh. Because the same cultural influences, basically, that existed since around the Civil War and before, not just the 1970s with KISS and the NFL. I could tell you about a long, long list of ways that this culture in the South has been synthesized as a deliberate, this soil has been tilled and fertilized astroturfedly in order to accept certain mores about the nature of God, about the relationship of the people with their government, and the relationship of people with each other, and the relationship of the people from this area to the people of the other areas, and about the value of education or lack thereof, the value of industrialization or lack thereof, and the glorification of an idyllic rural lifestyle, and the demonization of urbanness. I don't just mean that in the Black American sense, but in the classical people living together and working together for each other's progress and benefit and well-being. So, anyhow, the NFL took this divide between a lot of its fan base that has been coddled because of the presence as NFL's a patriotic safety zone because the department, as we see, the Department of Defense has marketed itself into that spot, into that last, the partnership between the Department of Defense and the NFL, and they have allowed Jay-Z, it's one of its head of promotions and branding, to bring in the biggest worldwide star. But he's not the biggest worldwide star he's not the biggest star in flyover country. He's not the biggest. He might be hidden in Houston, but he ain't hidden in Dallas. He might be hidden in New York, but he ain't hidden in Buffalo. He might be hitting in Miami, but he ain't hitting in Nashville. So on and so on. Might be hitting in southern parts of the Arizona Cardinals fan base, but he ain't hitting in Denver. And there you go. So now, okay, so he ain't patriotic, he ain't American, he's satanic. Provably false things, but they gain traction amongst the very insulated and coddled MAGA-oriented fan base of a subsection of the NFL fan base. I guarantee you that the fan base of the Miami Dolphins is not unhappy that Bad Bunny is going to be the halftime show. I guarantee you that New York's fan base is not unhappy to see Bad Bunny perform. I guarantee you that LA's and possibly Vegas's fan base is very happy to see Bad Bunny perform. But this reality is definitely lost on much of the fan bases of the NFL specifically, and people who all of a sudden have become casual NFL commenters and supporters. This is your boyfriend Tinoco telling you more of what you need to know, not just what you want to hear. Later.